I'd like to welcome you to our May webinar. In April or in March, we took a look at using CAD with TPC Part 1, and we covered the XREF and calibration tools. Then in April, we took a look more specifically at CAD Export Workflows, and now in May, we're going to look at CAD Import Workflows. So we're going to see some of these same XREF and calibration tools used over and over again, but we're going to focus today on importing CAD files. Now, a lot of you who are Traverse PC users do everything inside of Traverse PC, so you have really very little interaction with CAD. This webinar is for those of you that are dealing with project engineers or architects or city planners, people that are asking for CAD deliverables or providing CAD deliverables to you. And we want to make sure that you feel pretty comfortable both importing and exporting CAD out of Traverse PC so you can do that kind of work. Now we've got a real short outline here on the webinar page about what we're going to cover, but let's jump in a little bit deeper here. If you were to go to the member area, and in particular the Learning Center, you could bring up the recorded demos, and you could take a listen to part 2 that we did last month. So if we drop down here, here's our CAD Export Workflows. So you could go into the Learning Center and actually pick up that last webinar. When we're done here, today's webinar will be recorded here also. It'll be right under here called CAD Import Workflows. And where we're going to spend our time here today is in what we call this unified help system. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up for us. And we're going to see that down in the table of contents is a topic called using CAD. So let's scroll down so that comes up a little higher. And there are 2 topics in particular that we're interested for this webinar. Last month we went through this CAD export workflows, and we asked some basic questions about what's this CAD file coming in, and then from that we chose a workflow. We want to repeat that same process today, and we want to take a look at, okay, I need to import CAD. What questions do I want to ask to determine how I want to deal with CAD? And then I'm going to choose an appropriate workflow. So this is kind of a new thing we're looking at, creating these workflow topics. And I'm interested in your feedback as to whether or not this was helpful to you. It's just kind of a way to say, okay, in addition to learning the tools, let's learn how we put them together for doing certain things. So I've come to the help topics, using CAD, and I've dropped down to CAD Import Workflows. So in this topic, we're going to discuss the best practices on how to use CAD files with TPC to improve your workflows. We'll list the common workflows here, and then we'll drop down to each one specifically. So as an LS, when I get a CAD file for a project, these are some of the questions I ask real quick as I decide how to use that file. Am I just importing or exporting a one-off CAD drawing? Am I just getting one file and I'm going to pull something in for stakeout or for location of some kind? Or is this going to be an ongoing deal where I'll have a lot of revisions? The second here, when I get a CAD file, do I need the whole file or just some layers or objects? Entities, cells, whatever you want to call it, depending on whether you're using CAD or a MicroStation. Number 3, do I expect revisions? Will I get updated CAD files, or is this the only one? Number 4, am I required or requested to update an existing CAD file? Have they given me a CAD file and they want me to add some information to it based on some of the survey work I did? Number 5, is Civil 3D being used? And do I need to use LandXML for the import-export? Because that is available in Traverse PC. Number 6, do my survey grid and the CAD file grid match? Are they on the same coordinate system, or do I need to use the calibration tools to accommodate that or account for that? 7, then do I need to provide a certain version of AutoCAD or Bentley to use? Okay, so if I'm going to get something and I have to send something back, do I need to match that same version? And then when AutoCAD file types, what AutoCAD file types do I need to use? DWG, DXF, DFB, and we'll answer some of these questions when we take a look at these workflows. So let's talk about, based on how we answer those questions, the 6 things that we want to cover today. Sometimes all I need to do is convert the CAD file. We're going to take a look at when we would do that. Sometimes I just want to import a OneOff CAD file to a TPC drawing. Number 3, sometimes I need to insert a CAD file as an XREF into a TPC drawing. Number 4, sometimes I want to import specific objects or layers from that CAD file. This is an interesting one. Number 5, sometimes I just want to convert those CAD entities or layers to survey, so I have actual points and traverses to use. And then we mentioned earlier this Civil 3D via LandXML. Okay, so before we drop into these 6, I've got one that I want to just kind of take a look at quick. And it says using CAD files that are sent to you. When you receive one or more CAD files for a project, you can decide how best to use that file in Traverse PC. Let's take a look at a common workflow. So you get a project CAD files for any number of reasons. You're asked to do some stakeout or provide a description for an easement or find and mark lot corners. The list goes on and on. So what do you do with that file? Do you import it into a drawing, insert it as an XREF into a drawing, open it in the CAD view? These are all great options, but what you do really depends on how you plan to use that CAD file. So let's drop into this topic, using CAD files sent to you, and it opens that topic in the table of contents. And let's go ahead and watch this video. I'll make it full screen and turn the volume up.
Welcome to the TPC Desktop video series. In this video, we're going to look at the CAD view, and in particular opening an existing CAD file and just kind of finding out what's in it that we might need for our survey project. So I'm going to open up the CAD view, and I'm going to open up the CAD file that I want. It's just Learn Tree DWG. In a previous video, we converted this from a DXF to a DWG. And I'm going to get rid of this drawing view for a moment because I just want to focus on what's in here. Now, I can use the wheel, of course, to zoom in, zoom out. I can come up here and tell Traverse PC I want to pan around. And I'm primarily interested in these curb lines right here. Maybe I've got to go stake those out here. And I want to go ahead and tell Traverse PC then that I want to take a look at those. And it's real easy for me then to just pick one of those curb lines like that. You can see the grips that come up on it. And then with the cursor over those grips or really close to it, just tell Traverse PC I want to list those selected entities. And just like the output window in your CAD program, Traverse PC uses the message view to say, hey, we listed an object. It was a lightweight polyline. It's in model space. It's on the curb layer. And here are the primary points in there. So I've got the survey coordinates for that curb line. Now, if I wanted to come back and just kind of evaluate what else was on the curb line, I certainly could come back to my CAD view and click on this curb line instead. Let's go ahead and select that one now. And I've got a polyline instead. So this one isn't a lightweight polyline, it's just a polyline. They were using 2 basic kinds for that. Or maybe I missed it. So let's zoom in here a little tighter. And I'll bet you I just grabbed the wrong thing here. Let's go ahead and use our select button again. Let's try that one. Okay, I've got 2 different polylines, each with just slightly different handles, so there are 2 different entities there. One is on a curb layer, one is on a sidewalk layer. So I know right off the bat that I've got features that are pretty close, and I probably better pay attention to exactly what's going on. Now, I want to go to the Layers dialog, and I want to tell Traverse PC to select all of these layers and just turn them off. And then I want to find this curb layer, because I want to see what else they've put in on this curb layer. I'm going to make that my current layer, and I'm going to turn it on. So now we can go back to the drawing, and we can do a zoom extents, so I can see the whole thing again. And I can see I've got quite a bit of curb information here. And now I've excluded that sidewalk layer that was kind of coming in the way a little bit. And I can evaluate this information here with the list command. And let's go ahead and just zoom in here a little tighter and say I want to pick up one of these things here and just kind of see what the heck that is. I'm not really sure. I can list that out and say, okay, that's a polyline on the curve layer. Or I can say this. I'd say, this is really what I want. So I'm going to open my drawing view back up. I'm going to come in here and select everything here. So let's select this. There we go. So I've got all of those objects selected. And I want to then send those over to the drawing view. So I picked 349 selected entities, and I moved them over to the drawing view. So now they are oriented the same way as the drawing in the drawing view. They are on this curve layer, same layer they were on in the CAD view. But now I can come in and convert to survey or pull additional information out of these for use in COGO or in another drawing or in putting a billing together for the work that I did. It's a great way to explore entities first in the drawing using the layer tools, the pan, the zoom, those sort of things, the list command that you're all familiar with in CAD. And then when I kind of finally isolate what I want, I can simply send that over to Traverse PC and have that be part of a drawing and now part of my survey. I haven't changed those objects in the CAD file, but I have imported just those objects over into the survey at this point.
Okay, let's go ahead and stop that video right there. You got kind of a real quick peek then at some of the reasons why I would want to review a file in the CAD view. And I'm just going to cover a couple of them here again. So opening and reviewing existing CAD files. Oftentimes I'm looking for specific layers and entities. But you could also change CAD file formats, like converting a DXF to DWG. You could add your selected survey object from one of your TPC drawings to an existing CAD file, then save the changes back to the original file. You can send selected entities from a CAD file in the CAD view to the TPC drawing, and we saw an example of that here with those curve returns. I could send selected drawing objects from a TPC drawing to the CAD file in the CAD view. Okay, go the other way. I could use TPC's calibrations to use and exchange data with a CAD file that's not in the same grid as my survey. And I can preview a TPC drawing exported to CAD before I send it to the client. Other things I could do too, but we just wanted to list a few of them here for you. And then we wanted to say, you know, sometimes you just want to figure out how to use that file that was sent to you. And so before we drop into the 6 workflows, I did want to just take a look at that real quick and say, yeah, our CAD view in Traverse PC isn't designed to be a full CAD engine. It's designed to be a really useful tool for me to open up CAD files and see what's in them and decide how I want to use that information inside of Traverse PC. Okay, so let's drop into our first workflow then we're going to cover today, converting CAD file types. In the CAD view, you can open any CAD file and save it as another CAD type or version. So let's talk about this. A common workflow. If you're sending CAD files directly to your data collector, it may be limited to specific CAD file types and versions. So what if you get a newer version of a CAD file and your data collector only supports an older version? Well, you could use the CAD view simply to open that file you got and resave it in the right version. Kind of neat, okay? There's lots of times when I end up doing this, and it's just nice to have that tool available inside of Traverse PC because I might not have a CAD program to do that. So let's take a real quick look at saving a CAD file. And we talk about the fact that you can open any CAD file, make changes, and save the file. I can actually update that file. Okay. And let's just take a real quick look then at what that looks like. We're going to convert that same project, which by the way is our Fred Meyer store here. It was one of the first ones they built at this kind of oddball size of 95,000 square feet. There were a lot of changes and revisions before they finally got the layout of everything right. And I think they've built several more of them since, but it was kind of a fun project. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the TPC Desktop video series. In this video, we'll look at converting CAD file formats. This is a feature that's available in the CAD view in TPC Desktop 2016. So I've opened up the Learn Import CAD sample file, ships with Traverse PC, and I want to go to the CAD view, and I want to choose File, Open CAD File, and I'm going to select DXF. So this sample in the tutorial ships with the DXF file that we import. And I'm going to say, you know what, I may have gotten this DXF file from my old copy of Foresight or PackSoft or an old copy of CNG or even from an architect maybe that had an older copy of AutoCAD. And I want to convert this to a drawing CAD file that I can continue to work with. So I want to go from a flat file, exchange format, the DXF, into DWG, or basically a database for this drawing. So I'm going to select this Learn 13A DXF, just double click it, and Traverse PC is going to open that up inside the CAD file. And if you look real closely, the survey part I'm interested in is right over here, but I've got some extra stuff that was in that DXF file. And this happens sometimes because there's lots of programs that would write DXF files and sometimes kind of have extraneous stuff. So I'm just going to come over here and select those objects and delete. That allows me then to come in and do a zoom extents and really see the information that I'm after. And you can see that my coordinate system is rotated in the CAD drawing to the right. So north is to the right in the CAD view. North is straight up in the drawing view. But I basically want to say, convert this now from a DXF to a DWG. So all I have to do, once I've cleaned it up a little bit, is go File, Save CAD File As, and I'm going to tell Traverse PC I want to save it as a DWG file. Okay, so here are my options. And I want to choose a version. And it's really up to you. We set the default to 2007, 8, and 9. We still talk to people who are using AutoCAD all the way back to release 14, is not uncommon. So it's really your call as to which file format or version number you want to write. But I'm just going to choose this 789. And Traverse PC will use the extension DWG, so I'm going to do Learn 3A, which was the original name, and just press the Enter key. And now I've got a DWG file saved for this survey. And I can come back anytime after the fact now and use that file instead. So let's say Open CAD File. And here's my Learn 3A DWG. Open it up, and away I go. Probably better to show you closing this first. So let's close the CAD view. Let's open it back up and go in and pull in this CAD file that we saved. So here's our Learn 3A DWG, and away we go. So great way, when you need to convert an existing CAD file into another format that you can use for other reasons.
Okay, so we basically converted a DXF to a DWG here. But like I said, a lot of you are using data collectors now that you take in the field that need a certain version. Some of those still need a DXF, some of those want a DWG, some are limited to the versions. Traverse PC supports all the AutoCAD versions up through 2021, so you can pick and choose. We just don't want you to be caught flat-footed without the tools you need to work on a project like that. So that's one of the reasons we have that CAD view available. And sometimes you're just converting a CAD file. Okay, the second workflow, importing a OneOff CAD file to a TPC drawing. And I just want to say we don't really do that anymore. So as a rule, we recommend that you not import CAD files into TPC drawings anymore. We used to do that. We didn't used to have XREF and Calibration and all those tools, but starting in 2016, 2017, 2018, and then 2019 with the calibration, we really have worked hard to kind of put those tools in so that we don't do this anymore. So instead, beginning with 2018, we recommend that you consider inserting the drawing as an XREF, select the entities or layers you want in the CAD view and send them to the drawing view, or select the entities or layers you want in the CAD view and convert them to survey data. So if you still want to import a DWG, you certainly can open up one of the topics like importing DWG files, and all the information is here, as well as the videos that will walk you through how to do that. But like I said, we're really not recommending that you do that as a rule anymore. So we mentioned it here, and we're just going to skip right past it, and let's take a look instead at inserting a CAD file as an XREF into a TPC drawing. Beginning with TPC Desktop 2018, we recommend that you consider inserting a drawing as an XREF instead of importing into your drawing. So in the using CAD files that are sent to you above, we saw that. You've determined that it'll work best to insert the entire drawing. And sometimes we do that. Sometimes we want to bring the entire drawing into Traverse PC, and we recommend you do that as an XREF. So let's just drop down into this subtopic and take a look at how this works. So there's a link directly to the XREFs where you can get a lot more information on this. But let's take a look at the common workflows. You've received a CAD file for a project. You've opened the CAD file in the CAD view and determined they sent you just the layers and entities you need. Okay, so they kind of cleaned it up, or they modified the file for just what you needed. So your easiest option is simply to insert the entire CAD file into your drawing as an XREF. And really, we're going to do that and take a look at, maybe I insert the OneOff XREF. Okay, it may not have any changes coming down the road later on for the project, but I'm going to insert that without calibration into the drawing, or I could insert that same XREF with calibration into the drawing. And let's go ahead and take a look at both of these. So let's drop into the Using XREFs page. Now this is going to take us to a different part in the table of contents, but we just back up when we're done, or click on that link again to go back to that same place. So let's take a look at this sneak peek video here on XREFs and just get some kind of feel for how they work inside of Traverse PC.
In this video, we want to take a look at a new feature in TPC Desktop 2018, the support for CAD X References. I've got a sample survey opened here. It's actually our Fred Meyer store that we have here in town, and we did the boundary surveying on it, all the site survey. I'm just going to highlight this boundary here for you. And we got the drawings in from the engineering company to widen the highway, to do all the layout here. And originally when we did this, we just simply imported the DWG file. And that's what I've done here. So if I go into layers, I've got all of these layers that came in from that file, and I can ignore any layers that don't have any items on them. Okay. And basically Traverse PC recreated those drawing entities as drawing objects. But what happens if we undergo a number of changes during the construction process, and we need to show those changes in Traverse PC? Well, that's where the XREFs come in. So let's go ahead and do the same thing, but do it via XREFs here. So I'm going to tell Traverse PC that I want to open that file again. And let's go ahead and open the CAD view also. And I want to open that same file that we imported earlier, just so we can see what it looks like inside CAD. So here's the CAD file. It could come from anywhere. And we want to XREF this now in the drawing. So watch what we do. We're going to tell Traverse PC we want to insert an XREF. We go out and locate that file and choose Open. Traverse PC has now brought that in as an XREF. So if I put the cursor over this drawing, do you see how everything gets highlighted and it shows me that's an XREF? Well, of course, the great thing about XREFs then is that I can go into the original file, and let's just do something real simple. Let's go ahead and tell Traverse PC that today the change we're making is that we're adding a circle out here for something that we needed to show. Could be any kind of a change they made in it. But now we're going to go back to our Traverse PC file and simply regenerate the drawing. And Traverse PC says, okay, the file that's sitting out there on the server or the web or wherever it's at is newer than the XREF that I'm currently displaying. So I'm going to go ahead and update that. And that's all part of this XREF stuff. If you've used this inside of CAD, you're going to know that there's this automatic association to the XREF file. And then, of course, we've got lots of opportunities in Traverse PC to do the other XREF kinds of things. So I'm going to put the cursor over that XREF, come down, and for those of you who are familiar with XREFs, I can bind this, which makes it part of the drawing, and I lose that association to the XREF. I can bind it into a group, so I can reference it to the survey then. I can unload it so it's not taking up room in my drawing, and I can reload it anytime just to make sure it's proper, it's current. And then this is a real cool thing. XREF, reference the XREF to survey. So no matter what kind of grid the CAD file is on, let's say it's on kind of a local grid and I need to be on a state plane grid, I can apply all of Traverse PC's reference tools to this XREF. So I can tell Traverse PC that.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop the video there. Of course, we don't do this separate referencing to the survey anymore. We used to use that term. Now it's all covered under calibrations. So in this next video, we'll actually drop in and take a look at calibrating an XREF and kind of how that works different. And it's simply easier because it takes care of rotation, translation, scaling, and it uses least squares to do it. So I get a really solid solution with that. So this was a little bit older video, and I'll just cut it off there. Okay, I wanted you to just see a real quick example then of inserting an XREF into a drawing versus importing a CAD file. And in this topic, we cover three main advantages to you to bringing in the XREF as opposed to the entire drawing. And you heard us mention tracking project updates. So one of the great things about XREFs is that they store the date of the file when the file was brought in as an XREF. So if Traverse PC goes out and says, oh, that same XREF file has a newer date, it knows that we need to update the XREF. So XREFs are a great way to keep the drawing current with any revisions that are taking place. Another thing is that XREFs retain their layers. So even though I insert the XREF itself onto a Traverse PC layer, the 0 layer or a proposed layer, the XREF layers themselves show up inside Traverse PC. So I have access to the XREF layers in the drawing just like I would in a CAD program. So I can go in and turn those layers on or off, freeze or thaw. It's great. One of the tools Traverse PC has is to isolate a layer. So I can say I want to see just this layer, and all the other layers disappear until I say I'm done isolating, and then they all show back up again. So I don't have to go in and select all the others and turn them off. It's just real easy. And then one final note about saving a survey. When you save a Traverse PC file, a survey file, that has XREFs, the only thing it has to store is the XREF itself, which is really small. So all the information that the XREF brought in is still in the original CAD file and doesn't become part of the survey file. So this keeps the survey files pretty small, helps them load faster, save faster, instead of bringing all that drawing data in. And can you imagine if you had 3 revisions and all the drawing data of all 3 revisions, the survey file could get pretty big. With XREFs, you just have 3 XREFs, and the survey file would remain really small. So lots of reasons to use XREFs, and it's really the way we encourage you to bring the CAD files into a drawing anymore. And we just showed you, we just brought the entire drawing in. Sometimes, depending on how you take a look at that CAD file and decide you want to use it, sometimes that's the way you want to tackle it, and it does a great job with that. Okay, now I want to take a look at inserting a OneOff XREF with calibration into a TPC drawing. So if I bring that XREF in, one of the first things I'm going to do is check to see if it matches my survey. I want to make sure that they're using the same coordinate system that I used in my survey. If not, I want to calibrate it so it matches. Now I know we've covered calibrations in the previous 2 webinars, but I've got a real short video here, just under 5 minutes. And if you're new to this, this is going to be really important. If you've seen this before, this will give you a real good shot at saying, well, now how did they do that? How did they pick those point pairs? So let's go ahead and watch this video. We're going to go through the same steps. We're going to insert an XREF, but we're going to say it didn't come in where we thought it should. So let's get it calibrated to our survey. Okay, let's watch this.
In this video, let's take a quick look at calibrating an XREF to our drawing. Now, calibrations are new to TPC Desktop 2019. I'm going to go ahead and insert this XREF and tell you that prior to 2019, we would call this referencing the XREF to the survey. Beginning in 2019, it's just part of the calibration set that's available. So I'm going to right-click this, and instead of coming to XREF reference to survey, which is no longer there, by the way, I just say calibrate. Okay, so I'm basically saying I've brought in, either imported the DWG or brought in an XREF to it, and it doesn't share my coordinate reference system for my survey. So I need to get the DWG file on the same grid as my survey. Now, I may have already created a calibration for this, in which case I could simply reuse it. That's what this use existing is. Or I haven't done that yet, so I'm going to select point pairs, and I'm going to save that as a calibration. So now I will have a calibration I can reuse. So let's tell Traverse PC OK. And Traverse PC is going to prompt me at the bottom now to select an uncalibrated point first, and then select the calibrated pair. So let's tell Traverse PC I want to go to the end of this arc. Now I'm choosing an arc inside the XREF, and the whole XREF is being highlighted, but the tooltip is showing me that the cursor is over that arc. So I'm going to pick the end of that arc, and it draws that for me. And I'm going to pick the equivalent point in Traverse PC, which is the end of that arc right there. And see how I get the little symbols and lines there? Then I'm going to drag this over, and I'm going to pick the end of this line and the equivalent end of the line in Traverse PC. Okay, so now I've got 2 points. Let's come down here. Let's do the same thing with, I'm kind of using this right-of-way around the project here. So that's a line there. And I'm going to see if I can get this little line right here in Traverse PC. Okay. Okay, there's another pair. And then let's go all the way over here to the southwest corner. And there's an arc. I'm going to pick the end of. I'm going to pick the end of the arc in Traverse PC. Now, I'm pretty comfortable with those 4 points. So let's go ahead and right-click and have Traverse PC tell me it's done. And then let's do a couple of things here. Remember I told that dialog I want to save this calibration, and I'm looking real quickly here at the residuals, and they're very small. This is really what I expect. I expected this to be pretty tight, so I'm going to say yes. Let's go ahead and save that. And Traverse PC is going to provide, ask me for some information about this calibration, because when I use it in the future, I want to know what it was. Okay, so I'm doing a 2D conformal, which means that the entity shapes are not going to change, and I don't care about elevations. So that's simple enough. Traverse PC brought in the name of the survey. It brought in the file for me here. That's the from, so it came from this XREF file. And what I'm going to do is put it into my coordinate reference system, which is the Alberta WGS 84. So now I've saved information about that, and I can come in and save the calibration. So I'm just going to simply call this XREF. And I know that, well, let's call it CAD. Now I know it's from a CAD file. And if the engineers or the architects or whoever are working on that CAD system, I now know that this calibration will transform me from that CAD system to what my survey is using, or the reverse. I can go the other direction with it. And of course now I can look at this and say, wow, this is all fitting really nicely now. It just kind of rocked it right in for me, and I can come in and use the random inverse tools, kind of see how things are fit. Traverse PC knows that it has used that calibration, so I can come back to that calibration anytime. And it tells me that one object is calibrated by it. I can go in and look at the properties anytime or generate reports on that. Okay, so Traverse PC gives me a lot of information about the calibration even after the fact. Plus, I've stored it in the folder with the survey, so I can reuse it any number of times. Okay, that's a quick look at calibrating an XREF in TPC Desktop 2019.
Now, some of the interface for calibrations has changed since that video was recorded, but we've covered that in a number of the other videos. So I just want to talk about real quick then that the whole deal about using these XREFs here is that whether I need to calibrate them or not to my drawing, I have these advantages that I can get revised CAD files for that XREF and it gets updated automatically. So we cover quite a bit of that here in the help topics. If you get a revision of the associated CAD file, then you're going to just simply regen the drawing and it's going to update. If you get a revision as a new CAD file, so revision 1.dwg, revision 2.dwg, it's real easy in Traverse PC to add that revised file as a reference to that same calibration. So now that calibration, when it sees that revised file, will just automatically calibrate it. So real easy to manage how those revisions come. And we did the first webinar on this, and someone said, well, what do you do about keeping track of those revisions? And we talked about some options for saving those files separately or importing just certain objects into different drawings. And we may come back and cover that here a little bit in this webinar too, we'll see. So that's really one of the big reasons for switching to XREFs is to handle those revisions, and it does it just really great inside of Traverse PC. Okay, so we covered this, inserting a CAD file as an XREF. Now let's drop down to this next workflow, importing specific objects or layers from a CAD file. This is neat. Beginning with TPC Desktop 2016, you can select entities and layers from a CAD file to send to the drawing view. So I'm saying I don't necessarily want to insert that whole file as an XREF. I just want to bring certain things in. And remember I said some people had asked about revisions in those files. Some of you do markups on projects. And I thought, one of the things you might want to do is create a drawing in Traverse PC and bring over just certain aspects of that drawing, certain layers maybe that you're working on, and do your markup in a Traverse PC drawing and export it, do a PDF so you've got a red line drawing, and then save it as a revision 1 drawing. The next revision that comes, just create a new drawing in Traverse PC, go to that same layer, import that layer over to your drawing, do your markup, and write a PDF file out if that's what your deliverable is, and save that as the revision 2 drawing. So you could actually keep the copies of all your revisions as drawings inside of the Traverse PC survey. That's just one way. I mean, that's what this whole webinar is about, is kind of introduce different ways we can tackle this. So let's just take a look at this workflow. The common workflow says, if you are contracted to locate certain design elements of a large project, it doesn't make sense to bring the entire project into your TPC drawing. Rather, bring in just the elements you need. So we can import specific objects or layers from a CAD file. Let's go ahead and watch an example of this in this short video.
Welcome to the TPC Desktop video series. In this video, we'll be discussing one of the new features that we've added to the CAD view. This feature allows you to send CAD entity layers over to the drawing view. So let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to go ahead and zoom up on this upper portion of the parking lot here. And I'm going to go ahead and select only one of these entities from the parking lines. So instead of sending our entities over as a group, which the currently highlighted option would do, what we are going to illustrate this time is sending the selected entities layers as a group. So it takes the selected entities, collects a set of unique layers, and sends all the entities from those layers to the drawing view. So let me show you. I'm going to go ahead and choose this option. So we're going to send the selected entities layers as a group. And I have one object selected. So let's see what Traverse PC sends to the drawing view. Perfect. Traverse PC did a lot of work. We did group it, which is great. But notice that we only selected one entity, yet we have sent over 1,315 of them. What happened here is Traverse PC goes through all of the layers from the selected entities chooses those layers, and then sends all those entities over to the drawing view. So let's go ahead and illustrate that once more. This time, instead of selecting the entities directly from the CAD view, we can actually perform the same exact item by opening up the CAD View Layers dialog, and we scroll down to parking lot lines. I think it's... So we're going to go ahead and choose the striping layer, and we're going to go ahead and choose Send to Drawing View. So, one layer sent, one layer selected. Perfect. So we get a very similar result that we did when we sent over entities layers as a group. The only difference here is we didn't have to select the entity. We just simply chose the layer that that other entity existed on, and we sent it to the drawing view. So we go ahead and undo that, and we can close this. And just to illustrate that again, let's go ahead and choose a different entity, entirely different from a different layer. So let's go ahead and choose that, which is from the curbs layer. And we're going to choose these parking lines again, one of them. Great, so we have two selected entities with two different layers. So all of those layers, entities, will be sent over to the drawing view. So let's activate that command again. We're going to right click. We're going to go to drawing view. And we're going to go ahead and send selected entity layers as a group. Perfect. Notice now we have these turquoise lines. Well, those are actually a part of the curb layer. So if I hover over the item within the group, we can see it's a polyline. We can see it's part of the curb layer versus one of the parking lot lines, which is a simple line, but it's part of the striping layer. So we're hoping, instead of having to fish through all the entities in your CAD view, you can simply select the entities you want and then send over all of the entities from that layer to the drawing view. Perfect. We hope you enjoy this a lot, and we will see you in our next video. Thank you.
Okay. So remember that I said sometimes, like when you're doing markup stuff, you need a snapshot. And you need this revision, this date, whatever. This is what was in the CAD file for the project. So we've actually just brought that layer or those layers over into the drawing, and we can do our markup here, whatever we want, and we've created separation now from that original CAD file. So that CAD file, original CAD file, might be updated next week, tomorrow. And we could certainly pull in the updates from that, but we've got a record in time, a snapshot of what was in that file today. And of course, you saw in there real quickly, we came in and could do an undo, redo. I mean, all that's available. So if I don't quite get what I want, I just undo, go back and select entities or select layers again, and away we go. Now, we sent them over from layers as a group because there's some neat things we can do with groups inside a Traverse PC, and I want you to know that they also come over on the same layer names that they were in the CAD file. So this drawing inside Traverse PC now has a striping layer and has a curb layer that match up the layer names in the CAD file. So I got that association there kind of built in to what I was doing. Okay, so I know some of you just saw that for the first time. And I wanted you just to kind of get a real quick sneak peek about how that works, and say, yeah, you know, I could see how I could maybe want to do that in the future. Now I'm just going to drop in real quick and see what this other video was. Okay. This is selecting certain entities as opposed to layers, and it's just real short, so I want to watch this, have you watch this, and just open up the door a little bit to say, you know, there's other ways to select and get exactly what I want. So let's take a look at this quick.
Welcome to the TPC Desktop video series. In this video, we'll be discussing one of the new features added to the CAD view. The feature I'll be showing you today lets you send CAD entities over to the drawing view as a group. So let's go ahead and begin. I started by opening our sample survey, Learn Import CAD, and I went ahead and also opened our learncad.dwg in our CAD view. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom up on this upper portion of the parking lot. It's great. I'm going to go ahead and just choose a handful of these parking lines. Okay, so after I have selected entities, I'm going to go ahead and right-click. I'm going to go to the drawing view, go to drawing view, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the option Send Selected Entities as Group. So I click that. Traverse PC does a little work, updates our drawing view, and just to illustrate this, I'm going to go ahead and zoom up a little closer. So all the selected entities sent over are now in a single group of 97 objects. Also notice Traverse PC sent them to the current layer, which is the 0 layer. If the DWG file isn't on the same grid as your survey, you can always reference the group to the survey with a few extra clicks. So if you right-click any group and go to Groups, Blocks, and choose the option Reference Group to Survey.
And again, just like before, remember I said we do that all via calibration now. But I just wanted you to see that we can actually come in and say, you know, maybe I don't need everything on the striping layer. Maybe I just have certain entities that I want. And Traverse PC treats that a little differently in that now they come over onto the current layer in the drawing. So I can create a layer just for those entities, send those over from the CAD view, and I've got just those selected entities on a layer by themselves. This is a fantastic tool when I have certain things I need to pull out of a drawing, not everything on the layer. Sometimes I get a lighting layer that's got, you know, a bazillion light poles on it, and I just have to go back and stake out the ones that got knocked over. So I don't necessarily have to select everything. It's a lot easier. Just pick the ones that I need, create a drawing of those, and that now becomes part of my building for that work that I did that day. So a neat little tool that allows me to just come in and select what I want. Okay, let's back out of this. Let's come back and take a look at our overview here. So importing specific objects or layers from a CAD file. And some of you are going to look at that and go, wow, that's exactly what I need to do. Okay, now I want to take a look at this next one, converting CAD entities to survey. In the CAD view, you can select entities and layers and convert their CAD data to survey points and traverses. So this is going to bypass the drawing view in essence. Now we can still plot these points and traverses in the drawing view, but it's going to go directly from the CAD file to survey points, alignments, traverses. And to take a look at the workflow here. When you're asked to stake all the project elements on a layer, and they are distinct elements like light poles, for instance, this is a very fast way to get the survey data for them. Now this assumes that I'm going to stake them out as coordinate points. If I were going to stake them out as a DXF or DWG, I might simply just modify that CAD file, turn the layers off, resave it, and send that information over to my data collector. So we're going to assume here that I actually want the points or the traverses for this. And let's take a look at the topic. We're going to drop down into the subtopic for this, and going to take a look that here are some common workflows. We just talked about one of them. This is one we've done a lot in the past. We've got maybe the footings. We need to lay those out for that part of the project. Later on, we'll lay out the curb lines. Later on, we'll lay out the lighting system. So at different times, we come in and just pick out different things we want to stake out. And it's real easy just to convert to survey, and away we go. So let's drop into this subfolder, converting CAD entities to a survey. And a little bit longer video, 4 minutes here. Let's kind of see how this works and when we might choose to use this.
Welcome to the TPC Desktop video series. In this video, we're going to take a look at a new feature for converting CAD objects to survey so that we can actually use them in our survey project. So what we have here in Traverse PC, we've got lot boundaries for a small subdivision. The engineers and designers have sent us an AutoCAD file, a DWG file, which we have open over here in the CAD view. And it's got various things on it. What we need to do, we need to get out in the field and we need to stake out the building so that they can start pouring foundations. So here in the CAD view, I need to get these building foundations converted to survey data so that we can take it out in the field. So I'm going to come to the CAD view. I'll go into Layers, and I'm going to select our Building Lines layer, and I'll just tell Traverse PC to convert it to survey. I'm going to give the traverse a name. So I'm going to say Foundation, Lot, and just nothing else. Tell it the traverse view format I want, how I want it displayed in my drawing, and I'll say OK. Now, Traverse PC tells me that we have more than one entity selected, and it's asking if we want individual traverses for each one. I'm going to say yes, because we don't want all these buildings in the same traverse. Now, I close this layer dialog, and we can go to the Traverses Manager, and we find that now we have all of these house foundation traverses. I'm going to go ahead and select them, tag them into our drawing, and now we can see the foundations on our drawing. Now, these are not the right lot numbers for our foundations, as we'll see here. So I'm going to zoom in on this north section of the project here. Zoom in a little bit tighter, and you can see that this is lot 7 here. So I'm going to put my cursor over this, and it's labeled currently Foundation Lot 5. So I'm going to right-click on this traverse line, go to Traverse Properties, and I'm going to just change this. I'll put a space 7 and say OK. So now that's the foundation for Lot 7. Here's Lot 6. It's labeled Lot 7 without a space. I'll go to Traverse Properties and change this to space 6. Choose OK. Here's Lot 8 over here. I'll go ahead and do the same with this. It's labeled as 6. We'll go into the Traverse Properties and change this to space 8. So I'm doing this so that these will match up to our lots, and as we go forward with this project, we'll be able to create other drawings and know which house foundation to use on which lots and which drawings. So I've got all my lots here, and we're going to pretend that I've gone in and adjusted these traverse names to match their lots. But now I'm going to need corner offsets for all of these buildings. So I'm going to select all of my foundations. I'll go to COGO, and I'll say corner offsets. Yes, I want to do all 15 traverses, and then I can select the distance that I want off of each of these corners for my corner offsets. I'll go ahead and hit Compute and Close, and as you can see now, we have 5-foot offsets off of each building corner. So at this point, we can go back to our Traverses Manager. We can select our foundations or foundations and lots, whatever we want to export, and we can export it out to our data collector, go out in the field, and stake out all of these house corners. And that's how easy it is now to convert things from the CAD view into survey data that we can get out and use in the field. Thank you.
Okay. I wanted you to see that sometimes it's handy just to go directly from whatever entities I've got in the CAD file, and these all happen to be on the same layer. Each foundation was a separate polyline, so Traverse PC was smart enough with a little prompt to the user to say, yeah, create a traverse for each one of those. So now I had my separate foundations. And really, once I've got survey data like points, lines, traverses, surfaces, I can just kick Traverse PC's tools in, and now I've got all my offset distances plotted out and ready to go to my data collector for stakeout. Okay, or I could have just sent the foundations, gone out with GPS, GNSS, and said, okay, here's the point. And I could pull some lines out in the field. I mean, there's lots of ways to do that, but I've got the survey data as points and traverses to help me do that. So it's great. Now I can have Traverse PC take care of a lot of the busy work for me, which is what I'm interested in the first place. So I just wanted to have you see that converting entities to survey can really, really be a time saver. If I've got a lot of things that need to be converted over, sometimes just selecting the appropriate layer, having Traverse PC create all the survey data like the traverses, and then being able to use those traverses is a real time saver. So I want you to know this is here and that you can use it if it fits your workflow. Okay, and you can read back through kind of the different workflows that we think these work well for, and you're going to come up with your own, of course. Okay, let's take a look at using LandXML for Civil 3D, and this is the final workflow that we'll look at today. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with LandXML, but LandXML provides a representation of a Civil 3D project. And it does that by separating data into points, parcels, alignments, and surfaces. So in the same way that we used to use and still do a DXF file to represent a DWG project, LandXML is a way for us to represent a Civil 3D project. Now it uses XML as the format for it, so it's not a flat file. Well, it is still a flat file, it's just not the same format as DXF. But I want to just drop into this real quick. Because if you're working on a project that uses Civil 3D, this may be how you want to share data back and forth. And let's just take a look at importing a LandXML project and give you a little feel for how this works. Again, it's a pretty short video, but I think it'll kind of open the door here and give you an idea of what we're talking about. In this video, we're going to look at importing a LandXML file. Starting with TPC Desktop 2015, Traverse PC supports LandXML both importing and exporting. I'm going to open the sample folder and open a survey called Learn LandXML. This survey is actually blank. It doesn't have any data in it. That way we can see just the LandXML data that gets imported. Once the survey is open, let's choose File, Import. This is where we have access to most of the import options within Traverse PC. And from the list of filters or formats that we support, I choose LandXML. I'm going to skip the settings right now for this video, and let's choose Browse and find the XML file that we want to import. Here's one called Subdivision. It's one of the AutoCAD sample files available on the landxml.org website. I'm going to double-click it and choose Import. Traverse PC tells me that it's reading the XML file, it's reading the units, and then it tells me I need to select items to import. So it's opened up this dialog for me, and I see all of the data in the LandXML file. Let's zoom in here real quick, and I see that I've got 639 points, so I can expand those. And Traverse PC gives me the label and the coordinates for each one. I've got 83 parcels. If I expand that, I get the lot number or the name of that parcel and the area of each. I've got 6 alignments, and I've got 2 surfaces. So I see that right off the bat, I can bring in individual data items if I want. If I'm just interested in importing the surface, I can check just that surface. And when I choose OK, that's the data that will be brought in. If I want to bring in all the surfaces, I just click the root for surfaces, and Traverse PC will bring in all the surfaces. Same way for all the alignments. So I can click that. If I just click on the root LandXML, I'm going to bring in everything in that file. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's choose OK. Traverse PC is reading the points now. It's reading the parcels, the alignments, and the surfaces. So here it tells me that it's brought in all that data. When I close this out, I see that one of the settings I had turned on was to show import details. Let's go all the way to the top here. Here's the file that I imported, the subdivision XML. Here are the units it read, and then here's a subsection for points. So I see that here's point 1. It had an attribute or a point code of PCOR, and here are the coordinates. And here's the next point. So here's the data that I read out of that XML file. Some XML files are richer than others, and they include additional data, and you're going to see some of that here in the details. Now once I got down past the points, here's the section on the parcels. So here's lot 1. It has 6 points and an area of 41,278.3 square units. I'm going to drop down a little farther, and here are my alignments. First Avenue, Second Avenue. Notice that Traverse PC brings in the number of points and the lengths, but I also see this included a vertical alignment called FG Center, and it had 4 vertical curves in it. So Traverse PC is reading the vertical curve information along with the alignment information. And then finally, I see that I read 2 surfaces. And again, I see the name of the surface, some additional information about it, and I'm just going to close out that message view. What I want to show you in this video in kind of a very broad sense is what Traverse PC did with this data it brought in. I want you to see that the XML alignments came into a Traverse group called Alignments, and I can simply toggle those on, and here are all the alignments in that project. Here are all the parcels. So I'm going to set the tag for one of those parcels, and they all turn on. I'm going to right-click one of these and go to Traverse Settings, and I'm going to set the settings for all 83 parcels. Just lickety-split here. So let's turn on the name. Let's turn on the square feet for each one of those, and let's choose OK. So now here are all my LandXML parcels named, the areas, the points, the shared lot lines, and the alignments in here. And then finally, if I want, here are my surfaces, and I can simply tell Traverse PC that I want to turn one of these surfaces on. And Traverse PC initially, for surfaces, just displays the major contours. I can certainly come in and tell it that I want to see the minor contours as well, and that would be just fine. And remember, I had 2 surfaces in here, so I just turned on one of them. In additional videos, we'll take a look at each of these sort of data types within XML. We'll talk about the CG points and how Traverse PC brings those into the point manager. We'll talk about the traverses and the different types of traverses that we import. We'll talk about the surfaces, parcels, and alignments.
Okay, so you get a real quick picture there that we can import LandXML. Of course, we can export LandXML. But the thing about LandXML is that it correlates so well with Traverse PC's survey data. So points, parcels, alignments, surfaces. And it's real easy then for me to actually, it'd be like converting the data. Like we did instead of sending the layers over, we converted those layers or a layer to survey data. And we got those foundation layouts. Well, this is the same kind of thing with LandXML. We actually have survey data ready to use. And I'm going to take just a little liberty here and show you kind of why that's important. And we saw a little bit of it earlier with those foundations, but I'm just going to come up here and search for lot setbacks. And I just want to play this other video. It's just 5 minutes and show you why it's so nice to have CAD data, in this case from a Civil 3D project, come in as survey data, in this case again through a LandXML file. Because I have rich data, I can then do some really amazing time-saving stuff with inside of Traverse PC. And lot setbacks will just give you a little flavor for that. So let's watch this video.
In this video, we're going to take a look at automatic lot setbacks. This is a feature new to TPC Desktop 2015. Prior to this release, you could do this using the right-of-way offset tool, but lot setbacks are easier, a little more flexible as far as offset distances, and correspond real well with how LandXML handles lot setbacks as well. There are 3 parts to lot setbacks that we're going to look at in this video. One is specifying the offset distances or setback distances for front, rear, and side. The second is to tell Traverse PC to draw the setbacks and choose a line type, width, and color. We do that in the Traverse settings. And the third is to specify which lot lines are actually front, which are side, and which are rear. So I've imported this LandXML subdivision, and I've got 82 parcels.
Parcels are a special group of traverses that identify these as lots or parcels, and these are the traverses that Traverse PC can do setbacks for. So let's go ahead and zoom in here real quick. I'm just going to pick a little part of this, doesn't really matter where we do this. And I'm going to turn on all of the lot settings here, so we can have names and areas for each of these lots. Okay. And I want to show you what LandXML brought in for us, and that is the setback distances. So for each of these lots, here I'm going to choose lot 21. I can go into Traverse Properties, and here's the Setbacks tab that specifies the front, side, and rear setback distances. So I imported these from LandXML, but I could just as easily have entered them into each traverse. In fact, I'm going to close this and open up the survey information. And we see that for each survey, I can specify default setback distances, again, for front, side, and rear. So any new traverse that I create in this survey will automatically get these setback distances. I then can go into the traverse properties you just saw a moment ago and modify them. So LandXML correlates well with Traverse PC in that it stores these distances and transfers these back and forth as we import and export LandXML. So importing a LandXML file here is a great way to show this to you. So that's the first part, is to specify the setback distances for front, side, and rear. The second is actually to draw them. So let's go back into our parcels, go back into the traverse settings, and here's a new tab for setbacks. And we simply select the line type that I want to use. I'm going to use kind of a tight dashed line for this. We choose the line width and the color, and OK. And Traverse PC goes ahead and draws all those setback lines for us. So each of these lots included setback distances, and we've now told Traverse PC for each of these lots also to go ahead and draw the setbacks. And I did all of the lots, all 82 of these parcels, just with one right click. And Traverse PC then applied that to all the traverses or lots that are highlighted. So I could come back and turn these off and do one or two at a time. I just chose to select the parcel's name and highlighted all of them, made updating those settings real easy. Let's talk just very briefly about the third step here, then, which is setting the lot setback type. And we're actually going to cover that in another video for setbacks, because there's lots of ways to edit these setback types, and I want you to see how easy it is to do in Traverse PC. But let's come over to this lot 21 again, and I'm just going to make this a little larger so you can see how this works. And let's put the cursor over this line from 62 to 65. We're going to right-click and tell Traverse PC we want to set the setback type from whatever it is currently to, in this case, front. So we just set the setback type in Traverse PC, computed the new offset so that it's 15 feet instead of 10 feet based on whatever the geometry was, in this case a curve, and sideline tangents, and it moved that setback line back to the 15 feet and redrew it for us. So in the next video we'll take a look at some tools to select those easily and get the setback lines just the way you want them. So you can see that once I understand that I need to set the setback distances, I need to choose how to draw the setbacks in the traverse settings, and then I go in and edit which lines are front, side, and rear. Traverse PC really just takes care of the rest, and that's why we call these automatic setbacks.
Okay, I did want you to just see that real quick and realize that, wow, Traverse PC can do a ton of work for me once I bring that data in as parcels, which I did through LandXML. And I can do that as well through CAD entities like polylines. So really slick tools inside of Traverse PC. And that's why we wanted to do this webinar. That said, I want to ask some basic questions about the file, CAD file that I want to bring in. And based on how I answer those questions, I can choose a workflow that's going to save me a ton of time and also allow me to work with whatever revisions, whatever file types, whatever deliverables I need, whether or not I'm on the same coordinate grid or need to do the calibrations to accommodate that. all those tools are there. And really, I remember from back in the days when I did everything inside CAD, I'm not sure you can do a lot of this stuff in just a straight CAD program. I think having the Traverse PC survey alongside a CAD opens up just some great options for me, because I just can't tell you how many times I get architect's drawings in quarter scale, or I get grid versus ground distances, or in the lighting example that we put in the first webinar, they take my state plane coordinates and send them to 0, 0 to do a lighting plan. And what do I do with that? So I'm able to accomplish a lot of situations, or address a lot of situations really easily using these same tools that we've shown you here in these CAD import and CAD export webinars. Okay, that's taking a look at CAD import workflows.